The emergency alarm echoed through the corridors of New Geneva. Stationed as Ambassador David Stone hurried toward the communication center. 3 hours ago, every human colony in the Outer Rim had received the same message from the Galactic Council. The content was simple and terrifying. Humanity had 7 days to abandon all settlements beyond the Sol system or face total annihilation. Stone had spent 12 years as Earth's primary diplomatic representative to the galaxy's elder species. He knew their languages, their customs, and their barely concealed contempt for what they called the infant race. But this ultimatum was different. This was no longer about trade disputes or territorial negotiations. This was about survival. The massive holographic display in the communication center showed the current positions of human colonies across 17 star systems. Each glowing dot represented millions of lives, people who had left Earth to build new homes among the stars. The thought of abandoning them made Stone's stomach turn, but the alternative was worse. "Sir, we have incoming transmission from the Council Station," announced Lieutenant Martinez, her voice tight with tension. "It's Prime Arbiter Veltar himself." The hologram shifted, revealing the towering crystalline form of the hegemony's leader. His body was composed of living crystal that pulsed with internal light, and his voice carried the weight of millennia when he spoke. "Ambassador Stone, I trust you have received our message. The Council has made its decision regarding humanity's unauthorized expansion." Stone straightened, drawing on years of diplomatic training. "Prime Arbiter, with respect, the worlds we've settled were uninhabited and unclaimed. We've violated no laws or treaties. The law is not your concern, human. Order is. For 10,000 years, the Council has maintained peace through careful regulation of expansion. Your species has grown too quickly, claimed too much, and ignored the protocols that have kept this galaxy stable." The crystal being's form flickered with angry red light. "You speak of uninhabited worlds as if they were free for the taking. Every system in this galaxy has been catalogued, evaluated, and assigned. The fact that we chose not to inhabit certain worlds does not make them yours." Stone felt his heart racing but kept his voice steady. "What exactly are you demanding?" "Complete withdrawal from all systems beyond Sol. Your colonies will be evacuated within 7 standard days. Your exploration fleets will return to Earth space. Your species will remain in your home system until such time as the Council deems you ready for limited expansion under proper supervision." The words hit Stone like physical blows. 7 days to evacuate 17 worlds. It was impossible, even with their entire transport fleet working around the clock. And even if they could manage it, the message was clear: humanity was being caged like a dangerous animal. "And if we refuse?" Stone asked, though he already knew the answer. "Then the Council will demonstrate why elder species have ruled this galaxy for so long. Our combined fleets number in the hundreds of thousands. Your entire military consists of fewer than 300 vessels, most of which are converted civilian ships. The mathematics of this situation should be clear even to your young minds." The hologram shifted again, showing the massive fleet formations that the Council commanded. Ships the size of cities hung in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with the accumulated technology of civilizations that had mastered space travel when humanity was still discovering agriculture. "Your ships are impressive," Stone admitted, "but you're underestimating us if you think we'll simply submit to confinement." Veltar's crystalline form pulsed with what might have been amusement. "Human, your species has existed in space for barely 3 centuries. The youngest member of this council has been traveling between stars for over 5,000 years. Your courage is admirable, but courage means nothing against overwhelming force." Stone stared at the display, his mind racing through possibilities. Earth's fleet was indeed small compared to the Council's armada, but there had to be options. Humanity hadn't survived this long by giving up when faced with impossible odds. "We'll need time to consider your demands," he said finally. "You have already been given time. 7 days for evacuation, or we will begin systematic destruction of your colonial infrastructure. We have no desire to harm civilian populations, but we will not tolerate continued defiance." The transmission ended, leaving Stone alone with his thoughts and the weight of his species' future. Around him, the communication center buzzed with activity as technicians tried to establish contact with the outer colonies. The logistics of evacuation would be nightmarish, but the alternative was unthinkable. As he walked back to his office, Stone couldn't shake the feeling that something about this confrontation felt wrong. The Council's ultimatum was harsh, but there was an undercurrent of nervousness in Veltar's manner that didn't match his confident words. For beings who claimed overwhelming superiority, they seemed awfully eager to avoid an actual fight. His personal communicator chimed with an encrypted message from Earth. The return code identified it as coming from the highest levels of government. Stone's hands trembled slightly as he opened it. David, return to Earth immediately. Do not acknowledge this message. Tell no one about your recall. There are things about our situation that you need to understand before we make any decisions about the Council's demands. The President is calling an emergency session of the Defense Council. Your input will be crucial, but first you need to learn some truths about humanity's real capabilities. Safe travels. SecDef Harrison Stone stared at the message until it automatically deleted itself. Real capabilities? What did that mean? As far as he knew, Earth's military was exactly what it appeared to be. A modest collection of ships designed primarily for exploration and light defense, but as he made his way to the shuttle bay, Stone found himself remembering odd details from his years of diplomatic service. The way certain military officials had smiled when council representatives boasted about their fleet sizes. The restricted sections of lunar shipyards that even ambassadors couldn't visit. The occasional references to deep space operations that were never explained. By the time his shuttle cleared the station's docking bay, Stone was beginning to suspect that he had been kept in the dark about something important. Something that might change everything about humanity's response to the Council's ultimatum. The stars stretched into lines as the shuttle engaged its faster-than-light drive, carrying him toward answers that would reshape his understanding of humanity's place in the galaxy. The underground conference room, buried 3 kilometers beneath the Swiss Alps, had been designed for humanity's darkest moments. President Walsh sat at the head of the oval table, surrounded by the most powerful people on Earth. Defense Secretary Harrison, Intelligence Director Brooks, and the heads of every major military branch filled the seats around him. But all eyes were focused on Admiral Rebecca Torres, whose weathered face carried the weight of a secret that had been kept for over 2 centuries. Ladies and gentlemen, Torres began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about. To reveal everything you think you know about humanity's military capabilities is wrong. We have been engaged in the most successful deception in galactic history. Ambassador Stone, who had arrived from the council station just hours earlier, leaned forward. Admiral, with respect, I've seen our fleet manifests. We have maybe 300 combat-capable vessels. The council commands hundreds of thousands, Torres smiled grimly. David, those manifests show only our public fleet, the ships that we allow other species to see and catalog. Our real strength has been hidden in the dark spaces between stars since before your grandfather was born. She activated the room's holographic display, showing what appeared to be empty space in the outer reaches of the Sol system. Computer, execute Revelation Protocol 77 Alpha. The display transformed. Where empty space had been moments before, massive structures now appeared. Shipyards the size of asteroids, manufacturing facilities that dwarfed anything in the inner system, and most shocking of all, fleets of warships that stretched beyond the horizon of the display. My God, whispered Intelligence Director Brooks. How is this possible? Torres manipulated the display, zooming in on individual vessels. These weren't the sleek exploration ships that comprised humanity's known fleet. These were massive, angular warships bristling with weapon systems that looked like nothing in the galactic databases. Project Deepwatch began in 2387, just 20 years after first contact with the Centauri colonies, Torres explained. When we learned about the greater galaxy and the Council's domination of it, a group of far-sighted leaders made a crucial decision. They chose to hide our true development while we learned about our potential enemies. President Walsh found his voice. How long has this been going on? 238 years of continuous construction and development. We've built automated factories in the void beyond Neptune, powered by fusion reactors that we've hidden inside modified asteroids. The entire operation has been compartmentalized to such a degree that even most of our own military doesn't know about it. Stone stared at the display, his mind reeling. The implications of this are staggering. We've been lying to the entire galaxy for centuries. Not lying, Torres corrected. Surviving. Every species that has openly challenged the Council has been crushed or absorbed. The Andromedans, the Spiral Confederation, the Free Worlds Alliance, all destroyed because they revealed their strength too early. We learned from their mistakes. The display shifted again, showing detailed specifications of the hidden fleet. Ships with names like Retribution, Sovereign, Unbreakable, and Defiance. Each vessel was larger than anything in the Council's known. Inventory and their weapon systems were based on technologies that had been developed in complete secrecy. These ships have been crewed by volunteers who spend most of their time in cryogenic suspension, Torres continued. They wake up for training exercises, maintenance periods, and equipment upgrades. Some of these crews have been serving for 50 years or more, aging slowly while they perfected their skills. Defense Secretary Harrison leaned back in his chair. Rebecca, what you're describing is the largest military secret in human history. How have we kept this hidden from our own people? The same way we've kept it hidden from the galaxy. Compartmentalization, misdirection, and careful management of information. The crews are recruited from remote colonies. Their families are told they're serving on deep space exploration missions. The manufacturing facilities are disguised as scientific research stations. Even the raw materials are acquired through a network of automated mining operations that appear to be private commercial ventures. Stone's diplomatic training kicked in as he processed the implications. Admiral, if we have this kind of military capability, why haven't we used it? Why allow the Council to threaten us at all? Torres' expression grew serious. Because revealing our strength too early would have united the entire galaxy against us. The Council maintains power through the balance between their member species. If they had known about our true capabilities, they would have set aside their differences and combined their forces to destroy us before we could become a threat. But now, President Walsh asked, now they've forced our hand. The ultimatum gives us no choice but to reveal ourselves. And frankly, we're ready. Our weapons technology is at least 2 centuries ahead of anything in the galactic databases. Our ships are faster, more maneuverable, and better armed than anything the Council has ever faced. The display zoomed in on a particular class of vessel that looked like it could tear apart a planet. These are our Titan-class battleships. Each one carries enough firepower to destroy a Council fleet formation. We have over 300 of them, plus thousands of smaller vessels in supporting roles. Brooks shook his head in amazement. The resources required for this must be enormous. How have we funded it? The same automated systems that build our ships also mine asteroids and process raw materials. The entire operation is self-sustaining and has been for over a century. We've basically created a second human civilization in the dark spaces of our own solar system. Stone stood up and walked to the display, studying the massive ships. These vessels look ancient. Some of them appear to have been under construction for decades. That's because they have been, Torres confirmed. The oldest ships in our fleet began construction in 2401. They've been continuously upgraded and improved. But some of our hull designs are literally older than the youngest Council member species' entire spacefaring civilization. The room fell, silent as the full magnitude of the deception became clear. For over 2 centuries, humanity had been playing the role of the weak newcomer while secretly building the most powerful fleet in galactic history. They had studied their enemies, learned their weaknesses, and prepared for the day when diplomacy would no longer be enough. Admiral, President Walsh said finally, When can your fleet be ready for deployment? Torres checked her chronometer. The activation sequence began the moment we received the Council's ultimatum. Our crews are already coming out of cryogenic suspension. Within 48 hours, we'll have 12,000 combat-ready vessels prepared for action. 12,000, Stone repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. The Council has no idea what's coming. No, Torres agreed. They don't. And that's exactly how we've planned it. The darkness between stars had been home to Captain Alex Rivera for most of his adult life. As consciousness slowly returned to him, he felt the familiar sensation of the medical systems gently bringing him back from cryogenic suspension. The soft hum of the revival process was a sound he had learned to associate with purpose and duty. Around him, the bridge of the UES Prometheus began to awaken. Systems that had been dormant for 18 months started their activation sequences, filling the command center with the subtle vibrations of a ship coming alive. The Prometheus was 10 kilometers of armored death, built in the void and never seen by alien eyes. Captain, all systems are showing green across the board, reported Lieutenant Commander Phillips as she took her position at the tactical station. Her voice carried the slight hoarseness that came from extended suspension, but her training was already kicking in. Dark matter drives are online, quantum torpedo bays are loaded, and stealth systems are holding at maximum efficiency. Rivera pulled himself upright in his command chair, his body still adjusting to normal gravity after months of suspension. Through the massive viewports that lined the bridge, he could see the rest of Battle Group 7 emerging from their long sleep. The sight never failed to inspire him. Even after 15 years of service in the deep fleet, the ships of humanity's hidden armada were nothing like the vessels that explored the galaxy under Earth's flag. These were predators built for a single purpose: to fight and win against impossible odds. The Prometheus itself was a Titan-class battleship, its hull scarred by decades of construction and modification in the airless void. Communications, give me a fleet-wide channel, Rivera ordered. Channel open, sir. All ships, this is Captain Rivera. Welcome back to the land of the living. I know you're all wondering why we've been awakened ahead of schedule. The answer is simple. The Council has finally made their move. They've given humanity 7 days to abandon all colonies beyond Sol or face total destruction. He paused, watching the massive forms of his battle group take formation around the Prometheus. Ships with names like Vengeance, Retribution, and Sovereign moved with the practiced precision of crews who had trained for this moment for decades. For over 2 centuries, we've waited in the dark while our people played the role of the weak newcomer. We've watched as the Council threatened species after species, always hiding behind their superior numbers and ancient technology. Today, that ends. The tactical display showed the positions of all human vessels within 1,000 light-years. The public fleet, the ships that the galaxy knew about, appeared as small clusters around Earth and the outer colonies. But the real fleet, the ships that had been built in secret, showed as a massive constellation of power that dwarfed anything in the galactic databases. Sir, Phillips announced, we're receiving activation confirmations from all battle groups. The entire deep fleet is coming online. Current count is 11,937 vessels reporting ready for combat operations. Rivera nodded. Nearly 12,000 ships, each one designed to fight multiple opponents simultaneously. The Council's intelligence estimates suggested that humanity possessed fewer than 300 combat-capable vessels. They were about to learn how wrong they had been. Helm, set course for the outer system rendezvous point. Maximum stealth. Minimal emissions. We don't want to give away our position until we're ready. The Prometheus began to move, its dark matter drives propelling it through space without leaving the energy signature that conventional drives would produce. Around them, the rest of the battle group fell into formation, their movements coordinated. By communication systems that the Council had never detected, Rivera had been 25 when he first volunteered for the Deep Fleet. Like thousands of others, he had been recruited from the outer colonies, told that he would be serving on long-range exploration missions. The reality had been far different and far more important. For the past 15 years, he had spent most of his time in suspended animation, waking only for training exercises and equipment upgrades. His wife and daughter believed he was exploring the galactic rim, searching for new worlds to colonize. In reality, he had been preparing for the day when humanity would have to reveal its true strength. "Captain," the communications officer called. "Out, we're receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Torres. She's requesting all senior commanders to review the latest intelligence on Council fleet movements." The main display shifted to show the current positions of the Council's forces. Over 400,000 vessels were converging on the Sol system, representing the combined might of 7 elder species. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. "Impressive," Rivera mused. "They're not taking any chances." "Sir, with respect, how are we supposed to fight that many ships?" asked his executive officer, Commander Park. "Even with our technological advantages, the numbers are overwhelming," Rivera smiled grimly. "Commander, you're thinking like the Council expects us to think. They see numbers and assume that more ships automatically means victory. But we've had 2 centuries to study their tactics, their strategies, and their weaknesses." He manipulated the display, highlighting the Council formations. "Look at how they're arranged. Traditional battle lines with their heaviest ships in the center and lighter vessels protecting the flanks. It's the same formation they've used for thousands of years because it's always worked against technologically inferior opponents." "But we're not technologically inferior," Phillips observed. "Exactly. Our ships can phase in and out of normal space, strike from multiple dimensions simultaneously, and coordinate their attacks with a precision that their command structure can't match. We're not going to fight them ship to ship. We're going to fight them as a single organism." The tactical display updated again, showing the projected battle plan that had been developed over decades of simulation and refinement. The human fleet would not engage in traditional combat. Instead, they would use their superior technology to appear where the enemy least expected them, strike with overwhelming force, and disappear before the Council could respond. "Sir," the sensor officer reported, "we're detecting massive energy signatures from the inner system. It looks like the Council fleet is beginning its final approach." Rivera stood up, his body now fully adjusted to normal gravity. Around him, his crew worked with the quiet efficiency of professionals who had trained for this moment their entire careers. In a few hours, they would either secure humanity's place in the galaxy or die trying. "All stations, prepare for combat operations. This is what we've trained for, what we've waited for. The Council thinks they're dealing with a young, weak species. Today, they learn the truth about humanity." The ancient ships of the Deep Fleet began to move toward their destiny, carrying with them the hopes and determination of an entire species. They were vessels older than empires, crewed by people who had sacrificed years of their lives to remain hidden until this moment. The galaxy was about to witness the true face of human military power, and nothing would ever be the same. Fleet Admiral Morden of the Hegemony had commanded victorious fleets for over 3,000 years. His crystalline body had grown larger and more complex with each triumph, and today promised to add another easy conquest to his record. The human resistance gathered around Earth looked pathetic compared to the mighty armada he commanded. From the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, Morden observed the final preparations for what would surely be the shortest war in galactic history. 400,000 ships from 7 elder species hung in perfect formation at the edge of the Sol system, their combined firepower capable of reducing planets to cosmic dust. "Status report," he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of millennia. "All battle groups report ready for final assault," replied his tactical officer, Captain Yathara of the Assembly. Her mechanical form clicked and whirred as she processed the incoming data. "Human forces are concentrated around their homeworld, exactly as predicted. We count 293 vessels total." Morden's crystalline form pulsed with satisfaction. The humans were brave, he would give them that. Facing impossible odds with such a small fleet required courage. But courage meant nothing against overwhelming superior force. "Signal the fleet." Begin final approach. Target orbital installations first, then military vessels. We'll give them one chance to surrender before we demonstrate the consequences of defying the Council. The massive armada began to move forward, each ship taking its predetermined position in the battle formation. This was the same arrangement that had conquered the Andromedan Empire, crushed the Spiral Confederation, and brought dozens of other species to their knees. It had never failed, but as the fleet advanced deeper into the system, something impossible happened. Space itself seemed to shimmer and bend around them. The stars flickered like dying candles, and the fabric of reality appeared to ripple outward, from points of darkness that shouldn't exist. "Admiral," Yathara called out, her mechanical voice carrying an edge of confusion that Morden had never heard before. "I'm detecting massive energy signatures emerging from empty space. The readings don't match anything in our databases." Before Morden could respond, the universe exploded into chaos. Thousands of ships materialized from the void, their hulls scarred with age and their weapon systems unlike anything in the galactic archives. They appeared not in formation but scattered throughout the Council fleet, as if they had been hiding in the spaces between dimensions. "Impossible," Morden breathed, his crystalline form flickering with disbelief. "Our sensors showed empty space." There was nothing there, but the evidence was undeniable. The human fleet that had seemed so pitiful moments before was now dwarfed by the massive warships that surrounded them. These weren't the converted civilian vessels that intelligence had reported. These were predators built for destruction and aged by centuries of hidden preparation. The lead human vessel, a massive battleship that dwarfed even the Eternal Dominion, opened a communication channel. The voice that emerged was calm, professional, and utterly terrifying in its confidence. "I am Admiral Rebecca Torres of the Earth Defense Fleet. You are trespassing in human space and threatening human colonies. You have 30 seconds to reverse course and withdraw, or we will consider your presence an act of war." Morden's form pulsed with angry red light. "This is impossible. Our intelligence reports indicated that humanity possessed fewer than 300 combat vessels. Your species has been spacefaring for barely 3 centuries. "Our species has been preparing for this moment for over 2 centuries, Torres replied. "We've watched as you've threatened and conquered younger civilizations, always hiding behind your superior numbers and ancient technology. Today, you learn what happens when you underestimate humanity." The tactical display in front of Morden updated with new contact information, and what he saw made his ancient heart skip a beat. The human fleet wasn't just larger than expected, it was massive. 12,000 vessels, each one broadcasting energy signatures that suggested weapons. Technology far beyond anything in the Council's arsenals. "Admiral," Yathara reported, her mechanical voice now carrying a note of fear, "preliminary scans indicate that their ships are equipped with dark matter drives, quantum torpedo systems, and what appears to be dimensional phase technology. These weapon systems are theoretical at best in our databases." Morden stared at the display, his 3,000-year-old mind struggling to process what he was seeing. The humans had not only hidden their true military capacity, they had developed technologies that the Council's greatest scientists had deemed impossible. "How did you hide this from us?" he demanded over the open channel. Torres' voice carried a hint of amusement. "The same way we've hidden everything else. You see what we want you to see. Your intelligence networks have been observing our public fleet for centuries, never realizing that our real strength was being built in the dark spaces between stars." Around the Council fleet, the human ships began to take formation. But this wasn't the chaotic scramble of an inexperienced force. These vessels moved with precision that suggested decades of training, their coordination so perfect that they seemed to be controlled by a single mind. "Your ships are old," Morden observed, trying to regain some semblance of control. "Some of them appear to have been under construction for decades. How is this possible?" "The oldest ships in our fleet began construction in 2401, Torres explained. "They've been continuously upgraded and improved. But you're right, some of our hull designs are older than your youngest member species' entire spacefaring civilization." The implications hit Morden like a physical blow. While the Council had been confidently ruling the galaxy, believing themselves to be the supreme military power, humanity had been secretly building a fleet that made their own forces look primitive by comparison. "You've been deceiving us for centuries," he accused. "We've been surviving," Torres corrected. "Every species that has openly challenged the Council has been crushed. We learned from their mistakes. We chose to hide our strength until we were ready to use it." The human fleet finished taking position, and Morden realized with growing horror that they were now completely surrounded. The Council's numerical advantage had been rendered meaningless by the enemy's superior positioning and technology. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice carrying the weight of defeat before the battle had even begun. "We want you to leave," Torres replied simply. "Turn your fleets around and return to your home systems?" "The age of the Council dictating terms to younger species is over." Morden's form flickered with desperate anger. "You cannot simply declare the end of an order that has existed for 10,000 years. We have responsibilities, obligations to maintain galactic peace." "You have responsibilities to your own people," Torres countered. "Look around you, Admiral. You're outnumbered, outgunned, and facing weapons that your scientists can't even understand. You can withdraw with honor, or you can watch as we demonstrate why humanity is no longer willing to accept the Council's dominance." The silence that followed was deafening. Throughout the Council fleet, commanders who had never known defeat found themselves staring at an impossible situation. The species they had dismissed as weak newcomers had revealed themselves to be the most powerful military force in galactic history. "You have 29 seconds to make your decision," Torres announced. Morden looked at his tactical display one last time, seeing the truth that he had been blind to for centuries. Humanity had never been weak. They had simply been patient, waiting for the right moment to reveal their true strength. "Signal the fleet," he said quietly. "All ships, reverse course. We're returning to Council space." The great armada that had never known defeat began its retreat, leaving behind the shattered remains of their understanding of galactic power. The humans had won without firing a shot, their victory so complete that it rendered further combat meaningless. As the Council fleet disappeared into the distance, the galaxy faced a new reality. The balance of power that had existed for millennia had been overturned in a single moment, and nothing would ever be the same. 3 months after the revelation at Sol, the galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The Council's retreat had sent shockwaves through every civilized system, and now the balance of power that had existed for 10,000 years lay in ruins. Admiral Rebecca Torres stood in the observation deck of the newly constructed Humanity Station, watching as diplomatic vessels from dozens of species approached through the asteroid field that had once hidden humanity's greatest secrets. The massive space station had been built from the converted hull of one of their oldest construction ships, its cavernous interior now serving as a neutral meeting ground for the new galactic order. "Admiral, the representatives from the Spiral remnants have arrived," announced Captain Davis, her aide-de-camp. "That makes 37 different species requesting audience with the Human Defense Council." Torres nodded, her eyes still focused on the steady stream of ships approaching the station. In the 3 months since the Council's retreat, humanity had found itself thrust into a role it had never sought: galactic mediator. Species that had been oppressed for centuries were now seeking protection, while former Council members desperately tried to negotiate new arrangements. "What's the status of the peacekeeping operations?" she asked. "Generally positive," Davis replied, consulting his tablet. "The Andromedans have successfully reclaimed 3 of their former worlds without resistance. The Free Worlds Coalition has reformed and is requesting our assistance in establishing secure trade routes. And the hegemony has agreed to withdraw from 12 contested systems," Torres smiled grimly. The irony wasn't lost on her. Humanity had built the most powerful military force in galactic history, only to find themselves using it primarily to prevent conflicts rather than fight them. The mere presence of human ships in disputed systems was enough to discourage aggressive behavior from any faction. Admiral Prime Arbiter Veltar is requesting a private meeting, Davis continued. He's offering full disclosure of Council military capabilities in exchange for protection from what he calls extremist factions within the hegemony. Extremist factions, Torres repeated. You mean the ones who want to fight us instead of negotiating? Apparently. Our intelligence suggests that roughly 30% of the former council members are advocating for a renewed military campaign against Earth. They believe that our technology, while impressive, can be defeated through superior numbers and coordination. Torres turned from the observation deck, her expression thoughtful. They're probably right about the numbers. Even with our technological advantages, we couldn't win a prolonged war against the entire galaxy. But they don't know that, Davis? Pointed out, no, they don't. And that's the foundation of our new position. Fear of the unknown is often more powerful than the known itself. They made their way through the station's corridors, passing representatives from species that had been bitter enemies for millennia. The sight of ancient rivals sitting together in the same waiting area would have been impossible just months ago. Now, it was becoming commonplace. The main conference room had been designed to accommodate the wildly different physiologies of the galaxy's species. Crystalline beings sat alongside mechanical constructs, while gas-form entities hovered in specialized containment fields. At the center of it all, Torres took her seat at a simple metal table, her presence commanding attention despite her relatively small stature. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored entities, she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the room through advanced translation systems. We gather today to address the future of galactic civilization. The old order has ended. But what replaces it remains to be determined. Prime Arbiter Veltar S. crystalline form pulsed with nervous energy. Admiral Torres, the Council system maintained peace for 10,000 years. While we acknowledge that changes are necessary, surely some form of organized governance is required. I agree, Torres replied. But that governance cannot be based on the suppression of younger species or the threat of overwhelming force. We've seen where that leads. A mechanical voice spoke from the assembly delegation. What alternative do you propose? Without central authority, the galaxy will descend into chaos. Torres activated a holographic display showing the current state of galactic politics. The alternative is what we're already seeing. Voluntary cooperation based on mutual benefit rather than forced submission. Species working together because they choose to, not because they're afraid of destruction. And what of disputes? Asked Representative Threnduk of the Mantis Collective. Without the Council's authority to mediate conflicts, how will we resolve disagreements? The same way we're resolving them now, Torres replied. Through negotiation, compromise, and when necessary, the presence of neutral peacekeepers. Humanity is willing to serve in that capacity, but only as long as we're invited to do so. The room buzzed with conversation as representatives discussed the implications of Torres' words. The idea of voluntary cooperation rather than enforced order was radical, but the alternative was clear. Continued resistance to humanity's new position would only lead to more instability. What about your military forces? Veltar asked. Your fleets are more powerful than anything we've ever encountered. How do we know you won't use that power to become the new council? Torres leaned back in her chair, considering her words carefully. Because we've had that power for over 2 centuries and never used it for conquest. We could have revealed our capabilities at any time and demanded submission from the galaxy. Instead, we chose to remain hidden until we were forced to act. But you could change your minds, pressed another representative. Power corrupts, as they say. It does, Torres agreed. Which is why we're proposing a system of checks and balances. Humanity will maintain its military forces, but their deployment will be subject to oversight by a council of representatives from multiple species. We're also willing to share certain technologies to help other species develop their own defensive capabilities. The implications of that statement sent another wave of discussion through the room. Humanity was offering to give up its monopoly on advanced technology in exchange for a more stable galactic order. Why would you do that? Asked a representative from the Outer Rim territories. Torres stood up and walked to the observation windows where the stars stretched endlessly into the void. Because isolation isn't sustainable. We spent 2 centuries hiding our true capabilities, and while that served its purpose, it also cut us off from the broader galactic community. We want to be part of something larger, not rulers of it. She turned back to face the assembled representatives. Humanity has always been at its best when we're working alongside others, not dominating them. We've seen what happens when species try to rule through fear and superior force. It creates resentment, rebellion, and eventually collapse. A new voice spoke up from the back of the room. It belonged to Ambassador Stone, who had been quietly observing the proceedings. If I may add something, Admiral. In my years of diplomatic service, I've learned that sustainable peace can only exist between equals. What we're proposing isn't just beneficial for other species, it's necessary for our own long-term survival. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity wasn't just offering to share power. They were arguing that sharing power was the only way to maintain it. There will be resistance to these changes, Veltar warned. Not everyone will accept the end of the old order willingly. We know, Torres replied. Intelligence reports suggest that several former Council factions are already planning military action. They believe that a coordinated assault could overwhelm our defenses. Can it? Asked the Assembly representative bluntly. Torres smiled grimly. Probably not. But even if we won such a conflict, the cost would be enormous. Entire civilizations could be destroyed? That's not a future any of us should want. Captain Davis approached the table and handed Torres a data tablet. She scanned the contents quickly, then looked up at the assembled delegates. I've just received word that hegemony hardliners have begun mobilizing their reserve fleets. They're calling for what they term a final solution to the human problem. It appears we'll have a chance to test our new peacekeeping theories sooner than expected. The tension in the room was palpable. Despite all their discussions of cooperation and mutual benefit, the threat of large-scale warfare still loomed over the galaxy. What do you intend to do? Veltar asked. Torres looked around the room, meeting the eyes of representatives from dozens of different species. We're going to do exactly what we've been proposing. We'll ask for volunteers to join a peacekeeping coalition. Any species that wants to help maintain stability will be welcome to contribute ships and personnel. And if no one volunteers? Pressed Threnduk. Then we'll handle it ourselves, Torres replied simply. But I don't think that will be necessary. The galaxy is tired of war, tired of living under the threat of destruction. Most species want peace, even if they're not sure how to achieve it. Over the next several hours, the representatives debated, argued, and negotiated, but gradually a consensus began to emerge. Species after species agreed to contribute to the new peacekeeping force, not because they were compelled to, but because they chose to. By the end of the session, over 40 different civilizations had committed ships and personnel to what was being called the Galactic Stability Coalition. It wasn't the overwhelming force that the old council had commanded, but it was something more important, a voluntary alliance based on shared values rather than fear. As the representatives filed out of the conference room, Torres remained behind, staring out at the stars. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was at the center of that change. But unlike the council before them, they weren't trying to control that change. They were trying to guide it. Admiral, Davis said quietly, do you really think this will work? Torres considered the question for a long moment. I think it has to work, Captain. The alternative is too terrible to contemplate. Either we learn to work together as equals, or we destroy each other as enemies. She turned away from the window, her mind already focused on the challenges ahead. The hegemony hardliners would test their resolve soon enough, and the galaxy would learn whether the new order could survive its first real challenge. But for the first time in centuries, Torres felt genuinely optimistic about the future. Humanity had revealed its hidden strength not to conquer but to protect. They had torn down an empire not to build another, but to create something better. The ancient warships that had waited so long in the dark between stars had finally found their true purpose. They were no longer weapons of conquest, but guardians of a new age where species could choose their own destinies without fear of annihilation. As Torres made her way back to her quarters, she couldn't help but smile. The galaxy had always underestimated humanity's potential. Now they would learn what that potential could accomplish when it was used not for domination, but for liberation.